Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Thomas from the EuroCentral Cloud Advocacy team, and I'd like to show you today an interesting comparison between running the 3D Experience platform on premises versus running it on the cloud as software as a service. Well, not only due to, but for surely mainly accelerated by the current events all around COVID-19, a lot of companies around the world all of a sudden were confronted with requirements that their IT environment actually wasn't planned or laid out for. Employees and their workplaces had to be shifted from offices to home offices. Enhanced digital collaboration features were needed, and a huge amount of data needed to be made available for these scenarios, while at the same time, this data was to be protected and all of these collaboration features needed to be secured. For collaboration, we know that Dassault Systèmes provides the 3D Experience platform as a central base for collaborating internally and externally. But how do we ensure all the other requirements when my IT environment is run on premises in my data center? Well, those of our customers who already benefit from our SaaS or software as a service offer can tell you a story how flexible they were and how easy it was to meet these new requirements. And this is why a lot of companies today also take steps toward cloud-based or SaaS, software as a services solutions. But we wanted to talk money, right? So what really is the cost in the long run when I go to SaaS solutions compared to running the same environment on premises? But first of all, we'll do a general comparison. Maybe there's also a little bit of dramatization in it. You'll see that later. Well, when running the environment on premises, it seems to be pretty cost efficient. You have everything under your own control. You see the tip of the iceberg, namely the license cost, and this iceberg is obviously pretty small. And sure, you know there's more underneath the surface, and you calculated that all very well. You know all the costs, and yeah. But to be honest, does running a large IT organization, employing specialized people for that, investing a lot of time, effort, and money into IT projects and maintenance, does this all add any value to your core business? How much time and money do you really spend customizing, maintaining, and upgrading customizations instead of spending it for standardization that will help you reduce time to be faster with your core business? Now, the traumatization part, it can be very dangerous if you underestimate what's underneath the surface. This happened. Well, now to using the 3D Experience platform on the cloud as software as a services. Mm, the iceberg seems to be much bigger because you actually see the cost transparently. Everything is on the table above the surface with one centralized subscription fee. But the big part underneath the surface, which was partly known but was still hidden, has been reduced to the minimum. So you might have to spend a bit more time in training users to adopt standardized processes, but you don't need to spend all this time and effort to set up, customize, maintain these customized processes. All the infrastructure and maintenance is managed by Dassault Systèmes. So you pay only for what you actually use. It's transparent, right? And of course, this comes with the price. And we don't have time to develop and present exact numbers in this short presentation, but roughly speaking, with an uplift of around about 66% on your existing ALC, which is the license maintenance for those who do not know, you get rid of the biggest part of this, which anyway didn't add any value to your core business, right? So now the money's on the table. Let's sort it a little bit and get a little bit more into details. To have a good comparison, we made up an example customer. We assume there is an existing Dassault Systems environment. The customer is working file-based currently, and he's considering to move from an on-premise installation to a hosted solution, namely looking for a cloud provider just to buy services like infrastructure, hardware, and all of that stuff. So the requirements are there has to be the capability to work from home and to collaborate with suppliers externally. So the 3D experience platform needs to be internet exposed. The next thing is what we do not consider when considering the total cost of ownership is that there may be existing user hardware, existing server hardware in the basement, in the data center, internet service provider costs, and all of this. And we can only see a rough ratio between the costs. We can't deliver absolute numbers because this may differ and vary from case to case. And the labor costs, we assumed as expert labor costs at a European level. So let's get down to the nitty gritty. So first of all, we need to consider multiple dimensions. So first of all, the biggest two dimensions is labor that we need to invest in, and the other hand is license and infrastructure. Um, these two also need to be broken down, license and infrastructure in OpEx and CapEx. I come to that later, what it means for those who, for this is new. And the labor needs to be considered in upfront labor that you need to invest before the project is finished or during the project. So in order to have the infrastructure and everything up and running, and then we have to consider the ongoing labor, meaning what you always have to do as long as this software solution is running. So if we just lift and shift our existing environment to a hosted solution, let's consider the costs. Well, it's always, you know them, the usual suspects. Um, First of all, we take our licenses or we buy them one time upfront and let the environment be hosted in the cloud. As we all know, actually, there is no cloud. It's just someone else's computer. So we don't need to run the infrastructure, but we still need to care for all the rest. So everything that's underneath the surface. And if we have a closer look at it, we see that there's a lot of upfront investment when it comes to labor. And there's also a huge investment when it comes to capital expenditures, so CapEx. This is like buying the licenses and also purchasing third-party licenses. We need operating systems, we need databases, maybe virtualization software, all of that stuff. Then we have the running costs. That is basically maintenance for everything, maintenance for software, maintenance for Dassault Systèmes software, maintenance for third-party software, the charges that we pay to the service provider in order to let our solution run on their computer in the cloud. And then we have the ongoing labor costs, which are always there. It's not only the user platform functional administration, but it's also running things like migrations, updates, replication costs, and so on. So this is one thing, but these are only the ones that we can think of now. There are even more hidden figures to that, and we need to look at that as well, because especially in the ongoing costs and the ongoing labor costs, we have a lot more. We remember well that there was an internet exposure to the platform in order to let people work from home, access the data, and also to collaborate with external parties. So we need to have the cybersecurity considered, server hardening, external penetration tests. We have to assess risks for downtime. We have to document everything, customize training materials. We still have replication costs. We still need a disaster recovery plan. We need platform operation services. We need database experts. We need a solution architect. All of this, maybe you didn't have this in mind when you thought about what's underneath the surface of your iceberg. So to condense it a little bit, for this example case, we come to the point that labor, actually, this is the yellow and the red one, is the biggest chunk of our cost for running the system on premises. Even worse, ongoing labor is again the biggest part of our overall labor costs, meaning In fact, this big chunk will always be there as long as we have to run the system in our data center or in another data center. We will never get rid of that. Now, as a comparison, how does it look like if I decide to rent the software, 3DS software, instead of buying it, and I have it hosted with an infrastructure or cloud provider? Well, the CapEx, the capital expenditure, goes down. I will still come to this in a minute. The OpEx, the operational expenditure, is going up. But you remember from the last slide, labor is the biggest chunk of it. And we still don't get rid of this biggest part of this chunk, namely ongoing labor. It will be always there as long as the system is running. So in comparison, just lifting and shifting our environment to someone else's data center doesn't really bring the big bucks we were hoping for. Even not if we say, oh, we're super modern, we rent the software instead of buying it. We can just reduce our upfront investment in infrastructure and instead pay a service fee for that, shifting costs from CapEx to OpEx. And now, as promised, allow me to digress briefly on these two terms. In case you're not familiar with it, basically, in short, CapEx or capital expenditures are huge investments you have to make upfront, paying back very slowly, gradually over a long time period. But the money is gone now. If you buy a huge chunk of software, the money is gone. OpEx or operational expenditures are costs you spend now for the daily running of your company. So the big advantage, these can be deducted in the same accounting period as they are incurred. And by that, pay back in much shorter time. So it's good for companies, cash flow and liquidity to have rather OpEx than CapEx. But back to the icebergs. We just saw that just moving from one data center to another doesn't really make the big deal. And this is why we want to look at switching to software as a service. You remember centralized subscription fee, no non-value added stuff underneath the surface, paying only for what you use. So how does our comparison look like in this regard? Well, at first glance we see it's much less complicated. If you still want to buy licenses or move your existing licenses to the cloud, you have one single thing in CapEx. You have two lines in OpEx, giving you the chance to deduct this cost directly in the current accounting period, and you reduced labor. Most importantly, you reduced ongoing labor to a minimum if you still have in mind how much stuff there was before when you had to care for everything, and now we just have the functional and the user platform administration and the ongoing labor cost. Okay, you might have to spend some more time upfront to adapt to standardized processes and train your users to adopt them as well instead of customizing everything. Well, this is done once upfront. And as we remember well, ongoing labor was the biggest cost part when running the environment on premises or have it hosted with an infrastructure provider. So if you compare it now, it's nearly gone. The red one, you don't see it. Well, let's get even lower. Sounds a bit like a limbo dance battle. Sorry for that. If we think really toward digital transformation, we need to consider just renting software. Software as a service. Renting and paying it when we need it, as long as we need it. Just pay what we use. We'll have a look at the long-term CapEx. It's gone. We don't have any. Still the same amount of upfront work is to be done. Well, but we have minimized ongoing labor costs and everything is operational expenditures, which can be deducted directly in this accounting period we're in, you remember. Well, this is the example case for that. So we reduce that very much to the minimum. And to quickly break it down in the two categories, ongoing and upfront investment, this is very simplified to make it all clear. It's obvious, right? So if you want to reduce ongoing cost, that always accompanies you as long as you run the system in the same amount. Software as a service is the only way to go. But now the critics. Yes, but what does it look like over a few years? And you're right. Of course, we have to consider the development in the long run, as you see. And this presentation had something with total cost of ownership in the title, right? And this is what we look at now. At first, it seems that the cost for an on-premise or hosted solution is a bit higher, but then it stays stable or it even goes down, which doesn't really happen with the SaaS fees. They will always stay the same. But did you consider the large investments you have to make every few years at least? Upgrade projects, migrations, upgrading all your customization to the next release, migrating it, spending time and effort that is missing in your core business for upgrade and migration business or projects. You need to spend hardware environment, new server, operation systems, databases, etc., etc. Yes, of course, we have that with software as a service as well, but it's not your problem. You pay what you use, we take care of the rest. And there's still another thing to strongly take into consideration. You can benefit from new features and functionalities on premises realistically only every few years because it's so much effort to do the upgrade project, and you can't do that every year with a new release that comes out. When you run software as a service, you, and especially your core business, can benefit right away from every new release of the software without having to do anything about it and without losing time in your core business for lengthy migration and upgrade projects. And with these new features and with you focusing on your core business, you can be more competitive because your products are on the market faster than the ones from your competitor. And why? Because your competitor is still busy with his upgrade and migration project. And you know the one to the version that you were already using last year, not even the latest one. And last weekend, while you were having a barbecue with your family, your environment just got upgraded to the latest version, giving you even better features to be ever faster and more efficient than your competitor. And as we all know, time is money. So, thanks for being with me until here. Let's summarize a little bit briefly. The key takeaways: don't underestimate what's underneath the surface and take really everything into consideration. Your goal must be to focus on your core business and provide the best fitting and flexible IT tool available for your business when you need it, as long as you need it. So, always in the latest release and with the latest functionalities. Thank you for being with me.